Nestled within the arid deserts and rugged mountains of the American West, Nevada is a state often associated with its vast landscapes, mining towns, and the promise of opportunity. Yet its history is far richer than the rise of silver and the challenges of its harsh environment. It is also a story of ancient native cultures, westward expansion, and the transformation into the famed Silver State. To truly understand the formation of this state, we must begin at its earliest days, when the land of Nevada was home to Native American tribes living among its mountains and deserts. Long before Europeans arrived, the land that is now Nevada had been inhabited for more than 10,000 years. The principal indigenous peoples included the Numu or Numa, often called the Northern Paiute, the Washashu or Washoe, the Niue or Western Shoshone, and the Nuwuvi or Southern Paiute. In their own languages, these endonyms commonly mean the people, a reminder that identity was rooted in place and kinship. Each nation was composed of numerous bands closely tied to specific valleys, marshes, rivers, and mountain ranges. Names often reflected foodways and waterscapes. The Agai Tikata, the trout eaters, lived along the Walker River and Walker Lake. The Toi Tikata, the Tula eaters, lived in the Stillwater marshes. Seasonal rounds shaped social life. Winters were spent near reliable water and larder stores, while summers brought dispersed travel across the Great Basin to hunt pronghorn and deer, harvest seeds and pine nuts, fish streams and lakes, and gather roots and tubers. Knowledge of an arid environment and its rhythms underpinned a durable subsistence economy and a resilient culture. Archaeology confirms very early human presence in the Great Basin. Among the most striking finds is Spirit Cave near Fallon, where the remains of an adult wrapped in tool matting and associated artifacts date to roughly 9,400 years before present. Across Nevada, playas and interior basins preserve abundant traces of long-term hunter-gatherer occupation, lithic scatters, hearths, milling stones, and rock art that document the deep time of human adaptation to a capricious desert climate. In the southeast, along the lower Colorado River and its tributaries, ancestral Puebloan farmers established villages during the first millennium. The complex, sometimes called Pueblo Grande de Nevada, or the Lost City, contained clusters of contiguous rooms, pit houses, storage features, and irrigation traces that attest to centuries of community building and exchange. Although population estimates vary, and the settlements waxed and waned with climate and river courses, they illustrate that farming societies, as well as foragers, left lasting marks on the region. Before the 18th century, the indigenous nations of Nevada traded widely with neighbors to the north, south, and west. Obsidian, basketry, pigments, shells, hides, and seed cakes moved along intertribal networks that crisscrossed the basin and range. These exchanges fostered occasional multilingualism and intermarriage, and also diffused religious ideas and ceremonies. Conflicts occurred usually over access to water, hunting grounds, or seasonal pastures, but they tended to be limited in scale and duration. Since the Great Basin was among the last interior regions to draw sustained European attention, the peoples of Nevada retained languages, rituals, and economic patterns longer than many indigenous nations farther east and along the coasts. When outsiders finally arrived in significant numbers in the 19th century, the pace of change would become abrupt and often traumatic for communities that had endured for millennia. On the map of empire, Nevada lay at the far fringes of Spain's North American claims and later of independent Mexico. Harsh aridity, sparse non-indigenous population, and distance from coastal missions discouraged settlement. After the Adams-Onis Treaty of 1819 fixed the northern limit of Spanish claims at the 42nd parallel, The interior lands east of the Sierra Nevada remained largely unknown to colonial administrators and missionary orders who focused their attention on coastal Alta California and the Rio Grande provinces. In practice, Spanish sovereignty in the Great Basin was thin, more a cartographic assertion than an administrative reality. Even so, a handful of Spanish expeditions brushed the southern edge of present-day Nevada. In 1776, the Franciscan friar Francisco Garces left Sonora, traversed the Mojave, followed the Colorado, and crossed into what is now southern Nevada before continuing toward the California missions. His route relied heavily on long-established Mojave trails that linked riverine villages with desert waterholes and coastal markets. Garces's reports confirmed that interior passages existed, though his death in 1781 during unrest near the lower Colorado halted further mission efforts in the region for some time. After Mexico won independence in 1821, Nevada fell within the nominal bounds of Alta California, but Mexican control remained light. The most enduring development of the era was commerce along the Old Spanish Trail, opened to regular trade in 1829 by Antonio Armijo and other New Mexican merchants. The caravan route ran from Abiquiu and Santa Fe across the high deserts of southern Nevada, including the Las Vegas Valley and the Amargosa Corridor, to the ranchos and markets of Los Angeles. Woolen goods, blankets, and mules moved west, while hides and other California products moved east. Indigenous communities encountered these caravans with a mix of curiosity and caution. Some traded food, water, and guides for goods, while others resisted incursions into their territories. Meanwhile, American and British fur hunters and explorers began probing the Great Basin. In 1826, Jedediah Strong Smith cut across the interior on difficult journeys between the Pacific Northwest, Mexican California, and the Rockies, mapping rivers, mountain passes, and indigenous settlements. Peter Skenny Ogden of the Hudson's Bay Company led multiple trapping parties through northern Nevada in the late 1820s and early 1830s, documenting the Humboldt River system and discouraging American rivals through heavy trapping. These ventures, though commercial and exploratory rather than colonial, familiarized non-indigenous travelers with basin and range pathways and foreshadowed the larger American migration that would follow the U.S.-Mexican War. In short, under Spain and Mexico, the region that became Nevada saw very limited colonial settlement. The main legacies were trails, place names, and an embryonic exchange economy. Indigenous peoples maintained autonomy, negotiated episodic trade, and sometimes clashed with outsiders over resources, but large-scale dispossession had not yet begun. That would change rapidly after 1848. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848 ended the U.S.-Mexican War and transferred a vast expanse of northern Mexico to the United States, including the Great Basin lands that now form Nevada. Initially, the area had little formal organization. In 1850, Congress created the Territory of Utah, which encompassed most of present-day Nevada east of the Sierra Nevada, while admitting California as a state. Southernmost Nevada, near the lower Colorado, was at first tied to California's jurisdiction. For travelers heading to the California goldfields after 1848, routes through western Nevada became vital. The California Trail and its Carson and Truckee branches funneled tens of thousands of migrants along the Humboldt and across high passes into the Sierra. Way stations and trading posts sprouted to serve exhausted travelers. The earliest enduring non-indigenous settlement in Nevada began as Mormon outposts. In 1851, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints established Mormon Station at today's Genoa in Carson Valley to provide blacksmithing, supplies, and a ferry service on the Emigrant Road. But the Utah War of 1857 between federal troops and the territorial government led Brigham Young to recall many outlying Mormon settlers to the Salt Lake core, leaving behind homesteads and claims that other settlers quickly purchased. Then came the discovery that would transform the region. In 1859, miners working the slopes of Mount Davidson near present-day Virginia City uncovered the Comstock Lode, an immense body of silver and gold-bearing ore. The find attracted a rush of prospectors, capital, and technology. In a few years, the canyon country around Gold Hill and Virginia City was crowded with stamp mills, hoisting works, timbering operations, and ad hoc communities. Speculators grew rich and went bust with equal speed. Entrepreneurs and immigrants from across the United States and abroad arrived to try their luck, swelling the population and giving the territory an unexpectedly urban, mine-centered profile. Rapid growth created demands for government closer than distant Salt Lake City. In 1861, Congress carved the territory of Nevada out of western Utah, set Carson City as the capital, and created counties, courts, and a territorial administration. Although the overall population remained small, taxable wealth from mines and mills was significant. Territorial politics was fractious, combining boosterism with struggles over water rights, timber, and town sites. Relations with indigenous nations worsened as wagon traffic, ranching, and mining intruded on fisheries and seed-gathering grounds. The Pyramid Lake War of 1860 pitted northern Paiute bands and their allies against vigilantes and volunteer militias after violence at a trading post. Federal troops ultimately intervened, and a second engagement near the Truckee River brought a tenuous calm. The conflict presaged a wider pattern of dispossession and reservation policy that would mark the decades to come. By the early 1860s, economic momentum and national politics converged. The Civil War had broken out, and the Lincoln administration saw value in admitting loyal Western states both for their senators and for their mineral wealth. Nevada's path to statehood accelerated accordingly. On the 31st of October 1864, President Abraham Lincoln proclaimed Nevada the 36th state of the Union. The motto, "Battle Born," commemorates admission during the Civil War in support of the Union cause. Statehood brought representation in Congress and greater control over local affairs, but it also brought the responsibilities of sustaining a stable economy and society in a remote, sparsely populated region. Mining remained the backbone of Nevada's economy for decades. The Comstock Lode yielded spectacular amounts of bullion in the 1860s and 1870s, supporting banks, newspapers, theaters, and schools in booming Virginia City. Engineers refined techniques for deep, hard rock mining, developed square-set timbering, and extended miles of drains and tunnels. Other districts, Eureka, Austin, White Pine, and later Tonopah and Goldfield, contributed waves of prosperity as new strikes were made. The Virginia and Truckee Railroad and other lines linked mines to mills and markets, while freighting companies and stage lines crisscrossed the basins. As ore bodies declined and national financial crises struck in 1873 and 1893, Nevada felt severe shocks. Prices for silver slumped, investment dried up, and some camps emptied almost overnight. Silver politics became a defining feature of the state's identity. Nevada's Senator William M. Stewart championed the cause of free silver and backed measures like the Bland-Allison Act and later the Sherman Silver Purchase Act to sustain federal demand for the metal. Debates over the gold standard and the so-called Crime of 73 galvanized the state's press and electorate. Despite intermittent revivals, by the end of the 19th century, many mining towns were in decline, and livelihoods shifted toward ranching, small-scale agriculture, where water allowed, and service work. For indigenous peoples, the period was one of increasing pressure. Treaties and agreements recognized certain rights, but were often followed by encroachment. Reservations were established, and federal agents sought to confine Paiute, Shoshone, and Washoe communities to limited lands while promoting farming and assimilation. Conflicts over grazing, water sources, and fisheries persisted. The arrival of vast numbers of immigrants and stock during and after the California Rush had already depleted key resources and disrupted traditional subsistence rounds. Even so, indigenous communities maintained cultural practices and political organization, negotiated employment in ranching and mining, and asserted land and water claims that would echo into the 20th and 21st centuries. Socially, the state bore the marks of a frontier society. Mining camps were male-weighted and transient, but county seats cultivated civic institutions, courts, schools, churches, fraternal lodges, and newspapers. Gambling was common, though not yet legalized statewide, and so were saloons and entertainment halls. Law enforcement was uneven, and boom and bust cycles produced alternating optimism and disillusion. Yet, even in adversity, Nevadans experimented with ideas of local autonomy, resource regulation, and community building that would influence later policies. Nevada's 20th century transformation was dramatic. Mining continued to matter, with new discoveries at Tonopah and Goldfield at the century's turn, but the long-term trend pushed the economy towards services, tourism, and infrastructure. The Great Depression, paradoxically, catalyzed the shift. In 1931, facing collapsing revenues and unemployment, the legislature legalized wide-open gambling and liberalized divorce residency rules. The move was controversial but decisive. It gave struggling towns a new revenue stream and positioned Nevada as a distinctive destination where adults could seek entertainment and quick legal relief from marital ties. Las Vegas, incorporated only in 1911 and still a modest railroad town in the 1920s, emerged as the flagship of this new economy. The construction of Hoover Dam on the Colorado River from 1931 to 1936 brought thousands of workers to Boulder City and the Las Vegas Valley. The dam provided hydroelectric power and regulated water for Arizona, Nevada, and California, enabling growth across the Southwest. When it was completed and Lake Mead filled, the region possessed reliable electricity and a symbol of modern engineering prowess that drew sightseers by the thousands. Hoteliers and entrepreneurs seized the moment, building casinos and showrooms that redefined desert leisure. World War II accelerated change. Demand for strategic metals revived mining output. More consequentially, the military established airfields and training ranges in Nevada, taking advantage of clear skies, open land, and rail access. Installations such as Las Vegas Army Airfield, later Nellis Air Force Base, Tonopah Army Airfield, and Naval Air Station Fallon seeded a long-lasting defense presence. Service members and defense workers flooded into the state, boosting populations in Las Vegas, Reno, and smaller communities. After the war, the entertainment industry grew in tandem with military payrolls and post-war prosperity. Iconic casinos and resorts rose along the Las Vegas Strip, and celebrity acts turned the city into a global stage. By mid-century, Nevada's fiscal structure depended heavily on gaming taxes and tourism spending. To encourage further development, the state cultivated a business-friendly climate with relatively low taxes and pragmatic regulation. Organized crime played a role in early casino financing, but over time, corporate ownership and state oversight expanded, especially as investors like Howard Hughes acquired major properties. The state's identity shifted from mining frontier to playground of the American West, even as ranching and smaller mining operations continued elsewhere. From 1950 onward, Nevada entered an era of sustained urbanization anchored by Clark County in the south and Washoe County in the north. The Las Vegas Strip became a laboratory for hospitality architecture and themed entertainment. Properties such as Caesar's Palace and later the Mirage and Bellagio pioneered integrated resort models, combining gaming with fine dining, convention space, shopping, and headline entertainment. Reno and Sparks maintained their own casino and tourism sectors and served as gateways to the Sierra Nevada and Lake Tahoe. The state deliberately nurtured a pro-business environment. The absence of a state income tax, reliance on consumption and gaming revenues, and a regulatory framework tailored to hospitality and construction fueled rapid job creation. Universities and community colleges expanded to meet workforce needs, while transportation agencies built freeways, beltways, and transit systems to handle growth. By the early 21st century, Nevada's population exceeded 3 million, a stunning increase from mid-century levels. This success brought vulnerabilities. Heavy dependence on gaming, tourism, and construction made Nevada sensitive to national downturns. The housing crisis and Great Recession of 2008 hit the state particularly hard, producing high foreclosure and unemployment rates. Policymakers responded with diversification strategies, courting data centers, logistics hubs, advanced manufacturing, and renewable energy projects, while deepening the state's role in the meetings and conventions industry through facilities such as the Las Vegas Convention Center. Healthcare and education investments became recurring priorities as leaders sought to broaden the economic base and improve social indicators. Culturally, Nevada developed a distinctive blend of Old West libertarianism and cosmopolitan entertainment. At the same time, the state vigorously enforces gaming regulation and anti-corruption measures to protect its core industry's reputation. The civic landscape is marked by public art, museums of mining and atomic history, powwows and cultural centers of the Paiute, Shoshone, and Washoe peoples, and festivals that draw international audiences. A unique element of the modern era is the federal footprint. In 1951, the Nevada Test Site, now the Nevada National Security Site, opened north of Las Vegas. Between 1951 and 1992, the United States conducted hundreds of nuclear tests there, including atmospheric detonations in the 1950s and early 1960s, followed by underground tests after the Limited Test Ban Treaty. While the testing program brought jobs and federal investment, it also raised health and environmental concerns and left a complex legacy of downwinder claims and land use restrictions. During the same period, vast military ranges Nellis and Fallon in particular cemented Nevada's role in U.S. defense training. Politics in modern Nevada reflects rapid demographic change. The state has become one of the nation's bellwethers, swinging between parties in presidential elections and sending both Republicans and Democrats to statewide office. Notable figures have included Republican Governor and later U.S. Senator Paul Laxalt and Democratic Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, who helped direct federal resources to infrastructure, public lands, and renewable energy. Urban counties tend to lean Democratic, while rural counties remain reliably Republican, producing a dynamic competitive landscape. Through all these changes, indigenous nations continue to assert sovereignty and cultural vitality. Tribal enterprises in tourism and energy, stewardship of fisheries and water rights at Pyramid Lake and Walker Lake, and preservation of languages and ceremonies underscore enduring connections to place. Contemporary Nevada history, therefore, is not solely a story of casinos and construction cranes, but also of communities old and new, negotiating the use of land and water in a dry and beautiful country. Today, Nevada stands as a global symbol of entertainment and hospitality, a crucial node in American defense and logistics, and a state still shaped by mining, ranching, and the presence of its first peoples. Its journey from a sparsely settled Great Basin to a high-profile urban state illuminates broader American themes: the power of geography, the volatility of resource economies, the consequences of federal policy, and the capacity of communities to reinvent themselves. From the legacy of its native communities to the silver boom and the rise of its modern cities, the history of Nevada reflects both the harshness and vitality of the American West. These layers of the past have helped shape a multifaceted Nevada, one that is not only the proud silver state of tradition, but also a dynamic land continuing to write its story into the future.